Yeah, so hi everyone. I think we're recording, yeah? Okay, we're recording. Sorry, I don't stop talking now that Tamara's not here to keep me in check.
We'll just pretend the camera's not on.
Seriously, you forget. We always say to our guests, the first 2 minutes are the most awkward when we're like, hi, welcome back.
You're sort of straightening yourself up.
Yeah, I know. I see myself slowly sinking in. But yeah, so we're here today. I have Chris and Sarah from Reid Funeral Home, and I'm not sure where to look because I swear we've never had this many cameras either before. Joe is constantly changing things in here and adding equipment and spending our children's college fund, I'm sure. So I'm just going to look everywhere. But so we have Reid Funeral Home, and I was just mentioning that we'll start with a little introduction of you both.
Hi guys, this is Tamara.
And Caitlin.
And we are the hosts of the Gwen Effect podcast.
We just want to give a shout out to Hannah and Rachel at Blue Birch Collective for making our beautiful sign that you'll see in all of our videos on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. And then we have a lot to talk about today, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Of course, we're happy to.
This is amazing. I'm so glad you found us on Facebook, was it?
Yeah, I found you, which we will talk more about, but I found you through one of your life events, the Death Cafe, the conversation and community. So that's where I stumbled upon you. And I mean, I will add to this that I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac myself, and there's some anxiety there. So that intrigued me, and I wanted to know more. So I clicked, and then we connected. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful.
Real honor.
I'm privileged.
So glad to be doing it, and love the work that you're doing in this, and give our thanks to Tamara as well.
For sure,
for her openness and her persona, which comes across so well, as does yours.
Thank you so much.
You are a great tag team.
Oh, thank you. You guys can come over anytime. Thank you guys so much. As we were just saying, I do feel really privileged that we have the opportunity to have these discussions that are really hard conversations. So yeah, I'm really happy to do it. So you're going to jump in, I think, with who you are and your background and everything leading up to where we are today.
Yeah, I think you opening up that conversation through your podcast, it just kind of is like a little hole that we're working on our little hole, and we found in the rabbits underneath the ground. We found each other, and we're both trying to say, hey, it's important to look at these things.
For sure.
So what we do with the Examine Life is we have a series of the very first Monday of every month, well, except for July and August. We have a topic where we try to just have an educational evening. The Examined Life comes from the Socrates quote that an unexamined life isn't worth living.
Okay.
And it was in the context of death that to examine one's life means to consider that it will end.
Right.
So how do we, and that actually creates more meaning for our lives.
Right. If Tamara was here, she would say, there's nothing else guaranteed in life than death.
Yeah,
so I'll just interject.
Yeah,
she says it a lot.
Yes, yes.
Which is true. So that's wonderful. And you changed the theme. Then
we do.
Right?
Yeah. So we have. It actually started 27 years ago.
Wow.
My dad started the bereavement support program at Reid Funeral Home. My dad's Jim.
Okay.
Jim Reid, and he heard that this was something that was up and coming. That funeral homes were now having grief support, and he thought, well, that's a great idea. He said. For him, it was hard to say goodbye after the funeral,
right?
Because he and our funeral directors have made a real connection with the families. It's been such a traumatic and deep time for most families, and then to just say, "Well, take care," felt to him like he was leaving something on the table. So when he found that he could have a continuing relationship with families through this bereavement support, he jumped at it. So it used to be all about grief every month rather. And then over time, there were other groups that Chris has brought some information on that he is part of a network of in Kingston offering grief groups.
Okay.
So we saw that maybe we could switch a little, that there are other people filling that need, and we could do more about speaking to death for those who aren't necessarily bereaved.
Right.
Like the Death Cafe.
Yeah.
So this is all of us. Every night we go to bed thinking about it. Not every night, but a lot of us think about death a lot.
Often.
And we don't have a place to talk about it.
Right.
So we wanted to create an open and enjoyable, really honestly it's enjoyable,
Yeah.
You know,
I believe you. We talked a little bit before about trying to like break the stigma about it being a difficult conversation, a difficult topic, right? Yeah. Everybody's going to go through it at some point. So
it's somewhat helpful to differentiate, just for the purpose of discussion, between grief and bereavement.
Right.
Grief, everybody's going to go through it.
Right.
When we have a loss of somebody, when somebody dies, there's the shock of it.
Yeah.
I think we're all just sort of muddling through the whirlwind of the events.
Right.
And then in time, things rather settle in to what used to be normal, but now is a whole new normal. And then you still have the reality of the absence of the other. And so what's happened? You've been torn apart. And that's literally what the word bereavement means. So I'm going to differentiate just to help people understand that everybody's going to grieve. How are we going to work through the bereavement? You'll hear the term grief work. Right. I'd suggest to you that's more like the bereavement that goes on in differing ways the rest of our lives.
Okay, I love that.
I was sharing with Sarah on the way here that my presenting event was 40 years ago when I came back to Kingston to serve and to work, and I had 4 people that were important to me in my life. My family sort of disappeared in that year, all older people pretty much.
Well,
but that made my mom was 62 only, and as a 73-year-old, that seems really young.
Yeah,
yeah. But I just felt that I needed help, and I just recently had an episode in which I felt, where did that come from? Well, it was that 40-year-ago event, because bereavement is long-term, lifelong.
Right, it stays with you.
Even though we're still living with that person in our heart and our mind. And how do we work through those other elements of the loss, the absence of, what I call the presence of the absence of the other.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. I've never had that explained to me in that way. And
because they live with us.
Yeah.
That they don't die. Right. They continue to be in us and with us. I talk to people, you know, that I'm no longer part of my life that I can see, but they're very much part of me.
Lovely. Oh my goodness.
So I think it's important that we learn how to work through that.
Absolutely. And that's how you are supporting James Reid Funeral Home. Yeah. And so just to jump back with you, Sarah, like obviously this is, I think you're multi-generational in this, right? Yeah. Okay. And so I know that you have some education in social work and
literature.
Okay. Social work and literature.
Stories and counseling.
Okay. I imagine so.
Yeah. And I'm social work kind of thing. That's where my wife and I met, was in an undergrad social work program, and she was a school social worker for years.
Okay.
Then I went on into a vocational calling for ministry in the Christian tradition. And so I've been the last 40 to 50 years, both of us have, my wife and I, in that kind of work, if you will. And now those skill sets can translate well into this, and I've been serving as a celebrant, in other words, helping families for the last almost 6 years. Craft something that will be fitting and meaningful for a goodbye ceremony.
Okay.
And a celebration of their life. And now I've been asked to carry on in the area of the bereavement support work, which is an aftercare program offered through James Reid, and I think it's commendable.
Okay, you guys are busy. You guys are so busy.
Not as busy as you are.
No, this is incredible.
It's a tag team. It's like you and your Tamara kind of thing. Your husband here. It's a tag team. You can't do it on your own.
There's so many pieces to it to make sure that it's successful. Yeah. I'm sure you all rely on each other and depend on each other to bring the best experience in these moments. I can't imagine how challenging that would be. And so I guess maybe we can jump ahead a little bit. Like, I would love to know more about like prior to this experience. I know you had a lot of different, we've done a lot of different things in your life, and I know you're doing a lot of different things as well now, even too, and how you're impacting the funeral home. Do you guys want to take a couple of minutes to talk about, because you brought it up, the difference in traditional services, celebrations of life, and what you're seeing people kind of gravitate towards now, or maybe the pros and cons, or how do you help someone make that decision about what would be best for their family?
I can start with that. The trends have certainly become more casual, which I think is nice.
Right.
I grew up visiting the funeral home, waiting for my dad to drive me home every day after school, and it was like a creepy place.
Right.
You know, I remember just feeling like it was very, very formal, and a kid wasn't that welcome, whereas, you know, we have children in all the time now.
Right.
So our society as a whole has become more casual, and the celebration of life is what is more common. And that can be a whole range of things, though. It's often a gathering in which people are just visiting.
Okay.
So the family have come, and there's pictures around. It's often a lot about bringing items that speak to who the person was.
Okay.
So we have a couple mannequins that we put jerseys on, for example, and hats.
Okay, cool.
We will have a lot of memory boards for photographs. We make up slideshows. Those are really impactful of telling
Right.
the person's life story through pictures or a video. Then a lot of photo albums and their scrapbooks. And the other day we put quilts on all of the pews from a master quilter.
That was cool, so cool.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
See that picture? I wasn't part of that. That was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yes.
What a meaningful event that was for that family.
So everything sounds like it's becoming much more personal.
Yes.
More casual and more personal.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
The beauty of a ritual, which I like that word, not everybody likes that word, but if you realize you can, it doesn't mean something you have to pretzel yourself into to fit into,
Yes.
but it's actually something like that can just help us to give us what we need in life.
Right.
It's really helpful. We have been for the last 20 years having to redefine what a funeral is, and that can be hard for a lot of us.
Of course.
Because you know, if you had to always recreate something in every step of the way, your life it's quite tiring.
Yeah.
So our job, I really feel my vocation is to help put forward some examples of what you can do to say goodbye that's helpful.
Right.
You know, so I'm all for people doing something. It doesn't have to be even with us. Like, please just get together, you know, or even if you don't want to, like, try to do something every day, like kiss the person's photograph or light one of your lovely candles, or do something that as a ritual that is helping you to acknowledge this huge loss in your life.
Right.
And then, you know, it really does help us. I'm an introvert, but even for introverts, it really helps to get together with others.
Yes.
and say goodbye. So have some kind of ceremony, as we were saying, celebrations of life. Sometimes they do have, Chris will serve as a celebrant at those celebrations of life, or a family member will,
Right.
or a minister will, or and then they have meaningful talks. Eulogies have never gone away. So meaning the good news, like someone is talking about that person and saying what they meant to them. And I love hearing from family members who say, those were so meaningful to me. I learned more about my person
That person. Right.
than I even knew.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's wonderful.
It's one of the most important parts of any service, any ceremony, any ritual, whatever you want to call it, is to have the family articulate what that person means.
Right.
The word liturgy means literally the work of the people,
Okay.
kind of thing. And so what eulogies do, the good words of a eulogy, that's literally what the word means, is to help that family put into their own heart and mind,
Right.
and to think about it, to prepare for it, and to be able to share that with other significant people that are gathered around, whether it's in the chapel, which is provided there, or in a
Okay.
home, or a backyard, whatever it
Whatever
might be.
feels
To
right.
be able to share that amongst known and loved other people, that's the best. And I just love the fact that what used to be pure ceremony, ritual, lockstep kind of things, now is very much tailor-made.
Okay.
And to the person, we follow the lead of the family.
Right.
I, for example, I will visit in homes and ask
As
the
a
family,
celebrant.
I am not here to do what I want to do. I'm here to listen to you
Yes.
and to see what you want to do and to assist you in doing what you want to do.
Right. So
Where would you like to
advocating
go
for the
with that?
family.
And
Yeah.
anything is open, anything is possible.
Okay.
There's there was one that I did in which we had the kids. There were several small children, and just as I was leaving the family home, she said, "Oh, the kids love this song," and she named it, and I kept it under my hat and thought about it, and I thought, can I use that song
Right.
at the end of a service, absolutely I could.
Right.
And it was absolutely the best thing
Of course.
for that family. And it was totally anomalous to anything churchy or anything religious or anything typical
It was just
at all.
personal.
But it was personal
Right.
to that family, and I
And
think
that's
it had
what
all
matters.
kinds of significance.
I think that you're giving people such a beautiful, and let me just stop by saying, how lovely is it that the sun is coming in
I
on us right
know.
now? I feel like this is like,
Rather
right,
nice.
a little
Yeah.
ironic, right?
Uh-huh.
The skies are opening up after
Nice
a couple
lighting
rainy
effects.
days.
Everybody
Well done,
needs
man.
this on a Friday
Your
evening
husband
after
is
a week.
amazing.
I feel like, though,
Yes.
just listening to you explain this process, I mean, because there's such a lack of conversation, if you haven't been through the level of loss that requires you to be making these plans, no one's prepared really to do this, even if they
No.
feel they're prepared. And so just listening to you act so, with that family in mind is so reassuring and so lovely to hear, because you are picking up on those little things and essentially doing that job for them and taking that, stress and concern away from the family, and to be able to provide that experience for them in a positive way.
I call it, we create the frame in which they are drawing the picture.
Right.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
so it's an impressionistic work, if you will, that's being created by the family,
Right.
the way they want to, tailor-made for them. And it's beautiful.
Okay.
And even the words can be impressionistic.
Right.
You see, you don't have to have lockstep kind of factual, boring, let's say it out loud, a ritual in that sense, but you can have a well-crafted event
Right.
which celebrates that person, tailor-made, and it comes alive.
It sounds
comes
like art
alive.
almost, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
art of somebody's
It's
life.
like a family gathering
Yes.
where the family is just getting into the family room and just sharing great stories with one another and laughing and crying,
Right.
doing all the things we human beings do to say,
For sure.
this was an incredible human being in our life.
Yeah.
She or he had significance to me.
Yeah. So to get, I love that, and I think it segues back to your question: what is going on today? Sort of, what are people choosing when they're
Right.
someone's dying? Is that I'm really motivated by something I heard early on in my time at the funeral home, which was someone saying that my funeral director walked beside me.
Okay.
Lovely.
And it was, he didn't go ahead of me, and he wasn't behind me. I wasn't running the show. I wasn't sort of following him. He was just beside me the whole time, and he knew what was needed for each step.
Right.
And I think that's so helpful, and I really am proud of our funeral directors, because it's not like it used to be where you just shine up and you have a visitation for the night before and the day and the afternoon, and then you have a funeral and then you have a reception. It's not like we certainly we certainly do that, but even when we do that, we walk beside the person.
Right.
Because while they're doing the visitation, they might want to have the children played with in the coffee room by an aunt, and we'll set that up for them, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, as I said, I feel the burden for people, like many people, as you may know, as from reading obituaries, they say, there will be no ceremony.
Right.
And, my point of view, having done social work, I guess I have to say, obviously, I have a bias. Like, I can't come to this without a
We all
bias.
do, yeah.
That a ceremony is a good thing. However, I
Yes.
think a lot of it does come through my social work degree and just understanding the nature of ritual, as I was saying. That it
And,
really
and
does
that
help us.
connection, right? The supportive
Yes.
connection. My mother-in-law, oh my God. For a really long time, I did not want to have a funeral. And I haven't known much about it, but I love hearing you guys talk about this, because Joe and I have been together for 16 years, so I've said this many times to my mother-in-law, and she always gives me so much shit and says, it's not for you.
Oh, amen,
It's for
sister.
the family.
Yeah.
And she said that to me every single time, and I have loosened up on that, and I do see the value in setting that time aside for people to make that connection and experience grief. And there was something that I did read on your website, and it does go back to the walking, which we'll get into too, but it's breaking down the default isolation, right? And that's really true. And now that I've gone through the perspective of also grieving, I definitely think that, it's necessary for people to have that time. And I'm so excited to hear how tailored and personal it can be. I think a lot of people do still have that mindset that it's very structured and it's this, and this is what you receive, and that personalized connection is not always present. And maybe it's not with everyone, but it sounds like it is with you guys. So that's wonderful.
Yeah,
I have to ask, Chris, with everything you were talking about, how you immerse yourself in with the family especially, and I'm sure you as well, walking beside people that are grieving, how do you separate the emotional side and try to stay professional, and also then not carry those moments on? I'm sure you guys have witnessed a lot of traumatic moments and a lot of traumatic passings, and so how do you guys personally, I don't even know how to say that, like how do you take care of yourselves personally?
Well, in terms of working with the family, I do have to draw somewhat on my personal experience. We too are human. Right? And we're dealing with human beings. And I am not above asking a lot about the circumstances of that person, and not only in the past, but what happened recently.
Right.
Can you tell me that story? I really want to know so that I can be authentic and genuine when I'm helping you on the day of your celebrated event.
The full picture.
Kind of thing. So I try to go to the home. There's always a phone call that's possible to do it over the phone, which is fine, it's adequate, but the very best work is done when I go to a home, I knock on their door, they greet me, they welcome me into their space.
Can I just jump in here to clarify that that's for your celebrant role, right?
That's for the celebrant
we don't
role.
do the bereavement at home.
And the bereavement,
Right,
that's for celebrant role.
I see.
But I'm finding that there are a lot of connections now.
Yeah.
Because if I'm in the home and then later on I'm asked to be somebody that provides bereavement support, I'm already a friend.
Okay, you've
I
built
guess
that
that's where I'm
connection.
trying to drive to.
And trust.
You're saying is
too.
try to assess. You can never be a member of that family.
Right.
But for a short time, you can be a really important friend.
Right.
And then gain their trust in that regard, and then in the bereavement work, then you're a trusted other person.
Right.
So I try to get to that.
Of course.
Myself.
Absolutely.
Now, when I'm dealing with a family that I have not done the celebrant work, I listen a lot at the very beginning and have them tell me the story of their loved person.
Right.
Even if it's happened 2 years ago, which has happened recently. And I say, tell me all about that. And they tell me the story. And they share only what they want.
Right.
But they have, and I gain their trust by listening. And I, once in a while, will bring in something from my own life.
Right.
In which I've had to deal with a loss of some kind, whether it's a death or some major trauma that's taken place where I'm no longer the person that I used to be.
Right.
And try to identify in that way.
Okay. And do you feel like that connection where you can relate to people that you are sharing this experience with, does that help you cope with what these people are experiencing?
I believe so. Well, it humanizes rather than just being a objective professional coming and helping them in bereavement support.
Right.
Which sounds very
formal.
Abrupt.
Right.
Very objective and non-feeling kind of thing. Then I'm identifying with them just as a real person.
Okay.
Kind of thing. And I tell them up front who I am. Here's what I've done in my life. Kind of thing. Can you tell me about what you do in life? Kind of thing. And that way we establish a more organic personal relationship in the onset in the bereavement work where I haven't known their family at that point.
Right.
Of wanting to celebrate.
Okay. Sarah, what do you think? Is there something that you do to help you through some of these difficult times?
I think I was just going to jump off that because I do really believe in boundaries, and it's really important. Yeah. We have a real degree of confidentiality too, so I can't go home and tell everybody at home what the details that happened that day. And that can be hard sometimes. So I tell all of our staff, and I do it myself, like go see someone, download professionally. So you can, I was told by a doctor in Providence Care when I had something going on with me, and he said, you don't have something going on physically. Look what you do. At the time I was doing Chris's role. I was a full-on bereavement support provider. He said, every therapist in this building has a therapist.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll get a therapist.
We've heard that from our psychotherapists that have been on too.
Yes, and it really, really helped me, and it actually took away my physical illness. So I really am aware of that connection between body and mind. I try to listen to it. try to, and I like what Chris said. I like that our funeral home, we have those boundaries. Like we can't do everything we do if we're really going to share who we are with our people. Like we don't do that. Yeah. And that's not, I don't hear you saying that.
Yeah.
But like the other day we had I was really touched by these little children that came, and I was sitting and watching, and I was like crying, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to show them I'm crying, but this is real, This feels really sad to me, and it helped me connect with them.
Right.
So I don't get upset at myself when that happens.
Of course, you have to show yourself grace.
Yeah,
that's
right.
For sure. I wonder too, you probably lean a lot on each other as a team.
Yeah, because we can talk to each other.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it has to be a tag team kind of role kind of thing. It's very much teamwork, which was a bit of a surprise to me how much there needed to be that kind of sharing amongst staff, kind of thing, because we do have a strict adherence to confidentialities.
Of course.
Yet at the same time, this is a family of people helping families.
Right.
And as a result, we have established this wonderful business has established very much a familial and familiar kind of relationship among the people.
Yeah, and sense
that
of
work
community.
there, and that way, and that translates. It just comes across. When they come in the door, they see either Jim or Sarah, Reid, kind of thing. They see their funeral director, who's the primary director, but they also know there's a whole range of staff that are
and
helping.
other resources.
And they see the familial aspect of that. Okay. And I think it really translates just by osmosis.
Of course. Yeah, I love that you said it's a family taking care of a family.
Families,
yeah, I really like that. So speaking of community too, and all these other resources that you have outside of the funeral home, I know that we talked about the celebrated life events. You also have a lending library, and you also have a walking group. Is that right? Can you guys tell me about that?
I don't know if people are watching, they can look
Joe
at these
can
books.
I put him to work, but he can link some of these for sure.
Okay. So I brought some books from our lending library for those of you who are watching. But they're all grief related. Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking is very well known. Alan Wolfeld is very helpful with, he has books for all kinds of losses. Okay. Probably the best sort of psychological foundational grief work is by Therese Randau, How to Go On Living When Someone You Love Dies. There's lots and lots of options, but so that's a lending library. I know most things are online these days, so I can't say it's very active, but the truth is it's available to anyone in Kingston if they want to come in and borrow them for, we have a very generous 3-month period that lasts a lot longer. And the other part of it is this Walking Through Grief group that we have done, and there's some beautiful stories with this. So Chris and I will be going May 22nd.
22nd,
Wednesdays.
Okay.
For six Wednesdays, and we've been doing that for maybe 15 years now.
Wow.
And maybe not Chris and I, but
the program.
No, even longer than that. It was about 22 years ago I started it, and I was on it. And there's a group that's still walking that started 12 years ago.
Wow.
We don't attend, but they've just become friends.
Okay.
And that's the beautiful thing. There are at least 3 groups I know of like that.
That's amazing.
That the thing is that they find their people.
Right.
And they aren't people that you have, you don't necessarily share your lifestyle or your interests even, but these are people who get it.
Right.
And they become your tribe because without saying a whole lot, you get it.
Right.
And
which is very rare to find.
It's hard, right? Yeah. It's hard. A lot of people come and they just feel so desperate for that.
Right.
So it becomes a really important community for people.
I can just picture Tamara too. She's in my mind right now because she talks all the time too about how healing nature is and how spending that time outdoors is actually really effective as well. Yeah, for sure.
I have a gentleman right now that I'm talking with, and he has done his own walks through Lemoyne Point with a group of friends that they meet regularly.
Great.
Kind of thing. I'm fascinated I hope I can ask him sometime how that group began.
Right.
But he finds that tremendously helpful, and he's probably going to join this one that begins on May the 22nd,
Right.
because he has experience learning what it means to deal with bereavement. And he's asking us to insert a time in which, let's say, somebody comes that's very much an individual and maybe an introvert
Right.
kind of thing, but needs time on their own. Can we build something into that grief walk where people get a chance to go off and on their own?
Well,
that
what we
kind of
do
thing?
is we go by this beach that has little stones, and we take a minute. We say to everyone, take a stone if you would like, and hold it, and put an intention or a memory or maybe something you want to get rid of onto that stone, and then throw it in the water.
Wow.
And that's a little like quiet time when
Yeah,
just
people can connect.
this is your grief, and then you keep walking.
And then you talked about the therapeutic reality of nature, just being out in nature, and especially this time of the year when everything is green and burgeoning and
Yes.
new life out of old. The metaphor is all around.
Right.
And nature in and of itself is a mystical spirituality. It is a creative, recreative force that's
Right.
there. So
I have to ask
Important.
because you said the word green, and if you guys watched Jane Cook's episode, what color is your funeral home?
Blue.
Okay. Okay, good to know. We were having this discussion on that episode on green, most funeral homes being green, because it's like a sense, it's connected with a sense of like calming and things like that. And all I could picture was just like the ugliest green ever. I like blue, so that's good, as you can tell.
I see
So-
that, yeah.
Okay, I was
Sorry, I
was
didn't
like,
mean to
I
wear
had
green.
to- You're very calming though. You look very calming.
It's
so.
a moss green.
Well, that's really awesome. I do think that it's so special and important to really promote that your services don't end with,
The funeral.
the funeral.
And, and I need to
Yes.
say too that these are not only for people who've chosen James Reid. Like these are the walk, and even we offer 6 free visits with our bereavement support provider that is complimentary
Wow.
for anyone in the community. So it's because it's so rough out there. It's hard to find someone.
It
And
is.
we also need to just say, don't we, Chris, that we're not licensed.
Right.
And
We do need to
we
say
always
this.
say that right off the bat, that we are not therapists. We don't even call ourselves grief counselors because that's a technical term that we
Right.
don't qualify as. We fill an area that other people do too, that we call ourselves a listening ear.
Okay.
So how great would it be to just have someone be dedicated to listening to you for an hour?
That is me. I am an an uncertified listening ear. That is what I
That's
am.
wonderful.
Yeah.
How many places do we get where people really listen to us anymore?
It's
you
true.
know?
It's
in
true.
our
Luckily,
world.
it goes both ways for me, and I have
Good.
great connections and relationships that, we do lean on each other, and I think that that's kind of been a theme so far of this episode is about that, like, connection and, connection and also that give-take, right? That you can
Yes.
show up and provide for somebody for
There's
something.
a lovely phrase that comes from the Holy Scriptures kind of thing. It's the eyes of the heart.
Okay.
Well, I'm also using a term now that I think I'm coining, the ears of the heart.
Okay.
And so that's what we can do
Listening with the
as an
heart.
uncertified listening ear,
Right.
like you are, like we are in our roles kind of thing. I think there's something really profoundly needed
Okay.
and deeply appreciated in
Right.
the world that's looking for those truly listening people,
Right.
not just listening so they can think of the next thing to say, but so they can just take in and hear you
Right.
from your very core.
And understand. I talk just as much as I listen, though. I think I talk a lot.
That's healthy.
One of the other questions that we had in my lovely marker, my really organized marker paper. This is my first template that I've ever done, just special
Love
for
it.
you guys too. I wanted to chat about, one of the questions that came through was this always going to be your path? If not, how did you get here? And do you ever think about doing something else?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
So the work that you're doing right now, did you always want to do this work? If not, how did you get led to it? And do you ever think about doing something else? I'm sure you kind of are in a tough boat that you had this, before you that you could.
Yeah, but I had a whole life before I came here. I
Okay.
came here in my 40s. So.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, tell me about it.
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a long, long time. And then I did my social work degree, and halfway through it, I wanted to jump ship. Okay. And I decided, because I remember thinking, I'm 21 years old and I'm trying to handle everybody's problems. Like, I need to develop some problems of my own.
Yeah.
Life has to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm sure all the people I was supposed to help are happy I wasn't trying to help them too, because, you don't have a lot of life experience at 21. So I really, really loved reading and literature. And so I did my electives in English Lit, and then I went on, did another year, and I got a master's of English Lit, and that was a real dream come true.
Yeah.
That was my passion. Thank you. So, and then I felt that, how I was going to do that was teach English at community college.
Okay.
Because and so when I did that for 8 years, and I just absolutely loved bringing a piece of, like, a book or a piece of poetry or a play to somebody who was, there at college to study welding or firefighting or nursing, and they hated to have to take this English course, right?
Right.
But we get into it, like Death of a Salesman. I mean, I remember getting into that, and this guy who had failed it last year and came back to my course, my favorite students were those who had failed and come back, and he was like, "Man, miss, like, this is pretty good." And I was like, yes.
This sounds like a Freedom Writers, right? Almost like getting everybody on board, and good for you.
That was the payoff.
Yes.
Definitely.
So to me, that's really the exciting thing. Like, I don't want to live in an ivory tower. I don't think anybody does, but
right.
Well, maybe some do, but I don't. And
No.
and so bringing, like, life and stories all together, and then you come into this work and you realize no one needs to write fiction. There's so much. People's lives are so storied.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot too, how you just never know the extent of what people are going through until you start having the conversations, for sure.
Isn't that true? It's so humbling.
You mentioned that you did work in palliative care as well. Is that right?
I did. When I was a social work student in Montreal, I had a fantastic placement for a year at palliative care at the Royal Victoria Hospital.
Okay.
That has since, that site has now closed, but it's somewhere else. And
right.
It was a overwhelmingly positive experience to see people die, like dying in their own rooms with support, with social workers, right. with nurses, with doctors who had time.
Being so well cared for.
Well cared for. Even I had a couple who had no family, and it just felt like a real honor to be the last person to see them breathe,
right.
or to set up a funeral for one. I did.
Wow. Did they talk about, when you had their experience, I'm sure they did, but did they talk or focus on, like, stages of grief in palliative care?
They may have, honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Since then, I've studied them, and they're actually designed for palliative care, aren't they? Those stages of grief that everybody talks about. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with those looking at people in the dying process.
Right.
And we have applied them since then to grieving process, but they don't really apply correctly.
I was going to ask what you guys think of it.
There's been a whole development of that concept. I mean, Kubler-Ross was basic classic, if you will, and we're all indebted to her for her thinking, kind of thing. But we've also all discovered we're in this field either just by the nature of life, or our calling, our vocation,
right.
or the hard realities of moving along, and sometimes things get superseded. That grief and bereavement, as I was saying early on, really are
different,
lifelong.
Right.
And so the stages can be helpful, but can be unhelpful too, in that they sort of categorize things as if they were a nice, neat process. We all know that ain't the case.
It's not true.
It's not nice and neat, and there are far more than 5 stages, and they all get jumbled in together.
Right.
But it's so important to know that there is a process that takes place, not just grief for a year or two when it's most salient, most painful kind of thing, but the long work of bereavement and putting ourselves back together again, sometimes under therapeutic care,
right,
licensed care kind of thing, sometimes by the listening ears kind of thing, or by the new circles of relationship that we're developing. Part of what we do is develop new circles of relationship for people after the absence of their person has been most keenly felt. on into the bereavement years. And so what James Reid is trying to do is provide a track for people to walk on and to move forward on, so that we have a vision not only for the past, in which we rejoice, but a vision for the future with that person still part of our life.
Right. I love that. We say all the time too, it's hour by hour, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. And we talk about that a lot when we are referring to grief and how that comes and how it changes so quickly for you. Yeah. So where did you start, Chris? Like, what is your story a little bit? How did you end up
Well,
here?
I could go on for quite a long time about that, but let me just break in.
Kids are at grandma's. As long as you want.
When you're 73 years old, you got a long story. But essentially, there was that first year, 1982, I had several people disappear in my life.
Right.
And frankly, I have to say the care that was given wasn't all that great.
Right.
And it saddened me a great deal, made me angry.
Of course.
And did not help me move forward. And for like years afterwards, I was dealing with unresolved issues to do with that year in which a whole world for me, which had been shaping to me, disappeared because all these wonderful folks disappeared.
Right.
And I was trying to find my way as I am, full disclosure, I am a clergy person, just completed my time formally at the end of last year.
Okay.
So that was my first year in the saddle, if you will, of congregational ministry. Like all of us in early life and careers, we're trying to make our bones kind of thing and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I was having to grapple with that. So I had determined that if I had anything to do with this process into which people will inevitably enter, I'm going to do my very best work to make sure they have a much better experience than I had.
And you did.
And so I think, not intentionally, but by osmosis, I started learning skill sets that now translate into this late in life work, when I can really focus completely on it. I've been doing the celebrant work for a half a dozen years now, and now I'm into my first year of the bereavement support, and all of the skill sets that I've learned out of that initial 42 years ago this year, has come to full fruition. And I'm just finding tremendous personal benefit from that, and joy.
Yeah.
Can I say joy?
Yeah,
in the
you
midst
sound
of
so
sorrow?
passionate about.
Now, I think it's just important that this work that people must do if they're going to get to the healthy place again.
Right.
Broken apart, like the Kintsugi workshop is our next workshop.
Okay.
And broken pottery put back together again.
Right.
You know, you've seen those ads on TV.
Yeah.
With gold leaf and
Pretty it back up.
putting it back together again. It's broken, but in some ways more beautiful than it was before.
Right.
Because we've learned how to.
I love that. I love that analogy. I've been telling Tamara as soon as we're
That's
done
what
here,
Kintsugi is about,
like,
for example, in the Examine Life series kind of thing, is helping people to see, yes, life will go on.
Right.
I am pained, I am broken apart, but I'm put back together again. That's what we're trying to do with all of the aftercare work, if you will, right from a long ago established family with James Reid, let's say, all the way up through now to people that come in the door for the first time.
Right.
But they need help beyond the celebrative event or the ceremonial event. And that's what we're trying to do
I
with
think
all of
that's
this.
so beautiful listening to you guys, just really understanding like the passion and personal connection behind it. It's really eye-opening for me, so I'm really grateful. I vowed that I would ask this question, and it I hope Joe doesn't kill me, but we know somebody if he does. But so I wanted to chat about like different types of burials, and the reason I asked is because like my dad and I have talked, like my dad, knock on wood, like my parents are getting older, so we've started to have those conversations about how to prepare. Yeah. And so I know right now that I want to be cremated, but I know that even that now there's a lot of different kind of avenues to get to the same. I don't really know. You'll have to coach me through that. But Joe always says that he wants me to cremate him in the shop, Corey furnace. Like, he's just like, Anyways, they have a wood fire to heat the shop at, and he's like, just throw my body in there. Like, can I do that for him? No. Sorry, Joe.
I'm going to let Sarah address that one for sure. But it's just interesting just a comment. It's really interesting to see the variations that are available now.
Right, because when I think of it, I think of there's cremation.
I'm pretty sure that for example, Sarah, like me, is a proponent of what's been being called green burial.
Right.
Maybe you want to address that and the other forms in which people can be buried.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Tell me about it.
Okay. Well, Joe is not uncommon in his desire. It's the Viking burial I hear a lot. I'm surprised he didn't want to go down the river.
Yeah, we're just like in the backyard.
Sure, we're down Newport Creek here.
And those are the services that are not about the living. They're really about the deceased, right? And they are illegal. And to my knowledge, they don't happen in real life now.
Probably best.
Yeah. You don't want to end up in the newspaper. So the regulations around our bodies are really quite strict, and our government has a great care for it, and I'm really thankful for that. And
of course,
when you read the stories where those laws have been contravened, you know why. It's a horrible thing. So our bodies, I think it was Gladstone, Chris, who said a nation is judged by how it cares for its dead.
Yes, I think it was Gladstone.
And so there's a dignity to the body that does not end when we die.
Right.
Yes.
And the Ontario government pays an organization called Bereavement Authority of Ontario to regulate all of us who do anything with a deceased person. So you have to register a death, you have to apply for a cremation certificate, for a burial permit. Cemeteries are highly regulated.
Okay.
And that's all a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is interesting to know because you don't think about things like that.
I know. I think it's often a niche, just like I don't know a whole lot about a lot of things. So
of course,
this is
always something.
Yeah. So your question was around that, and then what other?
So I do think of just there being an option of cremation or an option of being buried.
Full burial.
Yeah.
So there are other options within the burial, I'll call it, the mode that you're talking about.
Okay.
And maybe Sarah would prefer to talk about that.
No, you can if you'd like.
Well, I was quite taken when I first went to the viewing room, which is the room where people choose an appropriate casket.
Right.
Or means of burial for their loved person.
Urns.
Well, they have urns kind of thing.
Okay.
There are bamboo for those that wish to be buried naturally. Yeah. That's the kind of thing I want to. There's a whole movement called the Green Burial Movement. There's a Green Burial Society in which people are enshrouded in natural textiles and that kind of thing, and are being buried. Some towns and municipalities are starting to establish green burial cemeteries.
Right.
So that's another option. Aquamation is another one.
My grandma had that.
And then terramation, which is a sort of a speeded up use of materials that are natural, but it speeds up the decomposition process kind of thing.
Okay.
So I don't know how common that one is.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it's as common, but there is that availability. But aquamation is another option, and the green burial kind of thing. There are the urns. People have pieces of jewelry in which the sometimes called cremains are placed as well. They can actually wear. Or a ring, or it can be. Sometimes people will craft their own urns out of wood because you have a woodworker in the family, or something like
personal.
that. And that's always worked out, through a funeral home, as long because it has to be appropriately sized, and so on and so forth. I was intrigued by that, Sarah. When I first came, I wasn't aware that all those possibilities were indeed there.
I have a true or false, really quick before you jump in. A true or false. Can you be turned into a diamond? I heard that you could be pressurized and turned into.
Your cremated remains can be made into a diamond.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Preface with that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Probably very expensive.
Yes.
Have you ever done it?
We've had people inquire, but they're turned off by the price.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's not something we have the machine to do. It
Okay.
would be something we would have done for you.
Wow.
We could
Honestly,
certainly have it
knock on
done.
wood, I would probably lose it. Like
That's a good point. That's the one thing, like, it's lovely, these options we have, like, this doesn't have it, but you can have a necklace and carry a little bit of someone's
Right.
remains with you. But I just would always worry about losing it, or,
Right. Be scared to wear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the green barrel, I know you've taken a special interest in that as well.
I have,
Are you
yeah.
seeing that? Do you feel like any of these are a trend, or do you feel like they're going to become more common? Do you feel like that will become more common?
I do think the green burial will become more common. I think we're at the sort of, back in the 80s when the Blue Box program wasn't in. I was working with that, and everyone thought that was crazy. And look
Okay.
at where we are today.
Right.
I mean, here every municipality has a Blue Box program.
Right.
But I think it might take a decade or two until it's that common.
Right.
But I think we will. And there's various levels of green burial. So right now, if I were to die tomorrow, I have actually already bought a plot at Cadockery Cemetery, and I would be in a bamboo casket, which is a biodegradable casket. I would not be embalmed.
Okay.
So there are 5 tenets of green burial. You're in a biodegradable casket. You're not embalmed. You're buried a little bit more shallowly, and the idea is that the biomes will decompose you and better,
Okay.
and that will be helpful to the earth. Cadockery Cemetery is sort of on the fence with that way, how much they'll do that. And then a true green burial cemetery has no pesticides, and they have no mowing.
Okay.
And then they don't have any monuments either.
Right.
So if you go to Picton, not far from here, Glenwood Cemetery has a beautiful wood. And all you'd know is it's a wood you're walking through.
Wow.
But there are people buried underneath it, and they're GPS marked.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so it's always recorded.
Yes, yeah. And some of them, to be honest, that I'm not really comfortable with that. I like the monuments idea. I want to be marked.
Yeah.
This is where I am.
Of course.
So everybody has a different premise, but the idea is that, you're part of nature, and there's some beautiful on Vancouver Island and in Tennessee, there are these conservation lands that have green burial sites within them, and they're quite beautiful.
Incredible. I think too, like, just listening to you guys talk about how you still want to be like celebrated after you pass away, and I think we had Darcy on, and she had traveled to, I think, Philippines. Sorry if it wasn't there, but and we talked too about, like, culturally how death is so different and how it's so celebrated and how they do things, other places too.
Yes.
So I think it's really cool to hear the advancement and also different options for people to really have that choice.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Other cultures really have a much more healthy view in many ways.
We talked about this.
For death, for their ancestors, because they believe their ancestors, as we discussed early on, are still living with them.
Right.
And they go and talk to them, or they'll have the Day of the Dead, for example, in
Yes.
Mexico, as an example, one of the most well-known examples.
Yeah.
And so that there's a healthiness to that. I was just talking with somebody up at Glenhaven Memorial Gardens, too, that more and more people are choosing columbariums and niche interment of cremains, kind of thing, cremations, because so many more families are moving now.
Right.
And they can literally, apparently, this is happening more and more, according to the staff member there at Glenhaven, that people will take their loved person with them,
Okay.
remove it from there and take them with them out to Nova Scotia.
Wow.
If they moved out there, for example, and have a reinterment there in a columbarium there. Because my generation in my family was the first one that moved away. The fact that we've come back to the area is unusual, kind of thing. So people are doing different things because the world has changed.
Right.
And we have to change with that
Of
in
course.
a way that matches the wishes and wants of the people.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay. I feel like I really am grateful because you guys I've learned a lot so far about this experience. When you're talking about, there's these like steps that you can take and you can choose how you want to participate. Does the family decide that? Is that included in people's will? Like, how do you get information about how you're handling the body after the funeral and how you're taking care of that person?
That's an excellent question, because not all of us realize that there's, again, laws around that.
Okay.
And everybody should have a will for this reason.
Right.
Because without a will, your next of kin will make those decisions. but they can be tricky to decide who that next of kin is.
Right.
And maybe they're not really readily accessible,
Right.
or they're not well. So it's great. It's really, we highly advise, I know everyone in funeral service really advises that we all write up a will. And we even have learned various ways to do it. And the best that would stand up in every court is one done by a lawyer.
Right.
But not everybody can afford that. So there are Staples sells will kits.
Okay.
If you do a holographic will, you have to do it just right, but it will be possible.
How does that work?
Well, if you can't type it, you can't use a word processor. I'm sounding old. You can't use a computer. You have to write it by hand and sign it, and if that's the case, it should stand up to, it will at least stand up for our purposes and for your families. If somebody, when I say stand up, it means if it's contested.
Right.
Let's say you in your will you said this should all go to my wife, but it's your second wife and your first children go, what?
Right.
Then they're gonna,
I'm sure that gets tricky for you guys.
Yes,
in your profession as well. Like, I'm sure there's sometimes a lot of, entitlement to that person that's passing away and how that family fits together.
Well, we appreciate you asking the question because we like people to know these things.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be bad cop at all.
Right.
But
Of
we're
course.
licensed.
Yeah.
And our funeral directors are very concerned to do the right thing. They can't lose their license. They can't.
Of course.
They can't say, sure, I'll let you
Let us slide
sign the
this time."
cremation certificate, but the next of kin is actually this other person.
Right.
We won't do a thing till we actually find that person.
That's challenging. And I'm
Yes.
sure you probably run into it more than you'd like to.
Thankfully, it's not
Okay,
super
Not as
common.
much.
Good.
No. We take it
That's what
very
I understand,
seriously,
yeah.
so I feel it strongly, but it's not very common.
Okay.
I guess it brings up the point that in terms of helping people when the death actually takes place,
Right.
in their grief and their bereavement, the more that can be planned ahead
Right.
by the person.
We're big on
him or
planning.
herself. Really important. That's where the kit comes in.
So speaking to planning, so obviously a will is important. What else do you feel is necessary for people to be fully prepared and planned for passing away?
Well, our funeral plan is what is our niche. So we have this guide that we've made up to take you through what you need to think about for what are the considerations. Of course, the province of Ontario needs certain vital statistics for death registration.
Okay.
Most of them are quite easy peasy, but I always use this example. Do you know your mother's name at her birth?
Right.
Do you know your mother's place of birth? And when you're 85 and you may not have that right now,
Right.
and your mom's not around, sort of thing.
Wow.
So there's some things like that, and
I'm
then
sure that's kind of
And those things
upsetting.
become salient right away.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I'm sure this is difficult for people who are, they're upset, they're grieving,
Yeah.
to try to recall all this, and then they have to do all this work to find this information out. I'm sure that would be challenging. So just knowing that before.
Yeah, these are the most difficult things this is the most difficult times of your life. So if you can think through these things before that emotion gets so high,
Right.
it really helps us. So this sort of helps you think through what you would like to have yourself as your service.
Okay.
All the things that we just talked about.
Right.
The options for cremation and burial. And then we had a lawyer write administering the estate from a legal perspective.
Right.
And probate, and who is responsible for handling the administration. So that's a big part of what we do at the Examine Life is education.
Right.
It's not just Chris and I. We have
Yes.
our estate care provider,
And
Therese.
talk about Therese. It's an amazing program
Yes,
to me.
it is.
I was stunned to know this when
It
I first
is.
came really on board in the last year.
Oh,
Yes.
exciting. So what's it about?
Our estate care program came up because I was providing bereavement support, but people weren't listening. They weren't talking, I should say, because they were so consumed with everything they had to do in the first 2-3 months.
Right.
What I have to, some people would say to me, the bank closed my account, 'cause,
Right.
or I need to go to this lawyer. And I didn't know that he had all these debts in some case, or she had all these, like there's so much is so stressful.
Right.
So we started having a dedicated person to work through those things with families.
Amazing.
With the executor, the next of kin. And 28 years later, it's currently Therese Barrett, who was a bereavement support provider.
Yes,
So
she's amazing.
She is. And she can, so part of what she does is sort of normalize grief, tell people what is normal to expect, because most of us are hit with it. We don't know why we're feeling so terrible.
Yeah. Therese is my guru.
Okay, I love that. Again, back to
And
that
Sarah
family.
too, because she's done this work that I'm doing. So
wonderful.
I'm blessed with. We are blessed with a wide range of really capable folk.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And Therese
Yes.
and Sarah.
And it really is amazing what she walks people through.
Stunning.
It would be hard to put it all into. It would take a half an hour to go through it all. Like she takes an hour and a half to go through it with everybody.
Okay.
And she calls
She's
the pension
one of the
companies
busiest people in
herself,
the
and she
system.
cancels their pensions, and she cancels their health card, and she drives a Service Canada for people, and so it's a very hands-on program that we offer for all of our families we serve, unless they choose our minimum services. We like to have a program that is just for, the basic, and that's sometimes for budget, sometimes because the son is a lawyer and says, I can do that, or the person is in a nursing home and most of their assets have been already taken care of.
Right.
So, but for most of us, we're kind of stuck with all this paperwork. So Therese in our estate care, she's actually the most popular staff member we have, and she's wonderful. Then we also have Heather Jackson, who does our pre-planning, and she says, I have the happiest job here because she meets with people when they're not bereaved.
Right.
When they're ready to talk about what they would like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a service that you're offering now.
Yeah, the Examine Life
wonderful.
Seminars that we have include a pre-planning workshop early on in the fall when we're starting up again, just to introduce people that want to come and talk about what does it mean to have pre-planning for a funeral. I don't understand what that is.
Right.
So that is part of the series, which again is trying to say that the Examined Life is really, really important.
And all of us, myself included, are procrastinators. So what we call it a workshop, and we actually work on it. Like we use pencils and we give out this guide and let's fill it out. And I want you to get 2 steps further than where you are when you came in. Okay. Because that's a big thing.
Do you find that, like everyone participating, do you find that you're getting younger people in thinking about these and have this conversation?
We are happy to say that this Examine Life series has brought in younger people who are just curious, who are looking to talk, especially the Death Cafe, especially our book night, our paint night. Unfortunately, as you know with Tamara and your other friends, that you don't like death happens at all ages.
Right.
So but it is hard for younger people because the preponderance of grievers are older.
Right.
So they often feel quite lonely. So we did want to mention that Bereaved Families of Ontario is we work with them through our network. Chris runs a monthly group called the Kingston Grief Network.
You guys are so busy, I have to say it again. Holy cow.
That's like a support work for people like us that are listening ears, uncertified listening ears, that are doing different things as volunteers. For example, in the city that we have the palliative care people that are part of it there. Somebody that represents Bereaved Families of Ontario.
Alzheimer's, they do bereavement.
It's amazing. There's South Frontenac, which covers South Frontenac Central and North Frontenac worker. She does an amazing, she has quite a wide catchment area that she covers. Okay. So every month we get together and just sort of share commonalities and support one another.
That's
simply
lovely.
by coming together first Monday of every month, and it's been immensely valuable.
Okay.
Also, the Bereaved Families of Ontario has differing kinds of regular monthly things. For example, parents who have lost a child.
Right.
Here tomorrow, for example.
Right.
The suicide loss, which is a whole different range of aftercare need, as you can well imagine, partner and spousal loss. All offered by Bereaved Families of Ontario. It's a service just waiting to
and it's
support
nice that
people.
it's so specific.
Categorized, very categorized. Living with loss, pregnancy and infant loss.
Right.
We well know that's a whole different thing. We had 4 miscarriages early in our life. That was another reality of our life. Our firstborn and then 4 afterwards, and I woke up 10 years later after one of those viable losses. We had to go through a burial, didn't know what to do. Nobody told us, you should have a ceremony for this. I woke up 10 years later, full of anger, kind of thing. And I traced it back, and I went to an anger counselor.
Good for you.
And we traced it back, and it was the loss of that child, which I had witnessed wrapped in a blanket, cavalierly taken out of the delivery room kind of thing. And I never had dealt with it.
Right.
Kind of thing. So it's important that there be groups that deal specifically with particular needs, and other people will be there that have gone through that same very specific loss.
Right.
For example, here tomorrow.
That's really, really important, I think, because we have touched before on and even being a medical parent, it's not the same, but just these levels of isolation in feeling like you're alone, feeling like people haven't gone through what you're going through, and death just brings all of that out tenfold.
We mentioned Death Cafe. I'd sort of like Sarah to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I
get a lot of questions in my work about what is a Death Cafe. It sounds so weird.
Right.
And I know that feeling because I felt the same when I first heard it. What is that?
Well, it is a place for conversation around death and dying, and there's no agenda. It was started by a young man in England who felt that there wasn't enough conversation, and it became a worldwide experience. And to do a death cafe, you have to follow certain rules, guidelines, and that is you need to not have any sponsorship at all.
Okay.
So we're very careful to not talk about James Reid we host it, but we don't talk about our programs.
Right.
We don't promote them, I should say. I guess we honestly do talk about what's coming next down the pipe. We also have no agenda, so we don't come in and say this is what we're going to talk about.
Right.
We don't even really moderate too much. And then the other thing is you have to have cake.
Of course.
No,
makes
that's
everything
essential.
better. Oh, that's wonderful. I had a question. I know you just recently had Gwen a couple of weeks ago. Was there a conversation that was really impactful, or a question that was really common that people did want to know? Did there end up being a theme of the evening? How did that go?
I missed it. I was in May.
I wasn't at that previous one, but my first examined life was back last September. It had a profound effect on me.
Okay.
There were about 4 dining room table sitting groups, and we sat at different groups. I think there was one change in the evening, and there was a presenting question, a very open-ended question on the table.
Right.
And we answered that question. Here I am, a Christian clergy person, just retired, about to retire back in September. From that work, and there was a Wiccan there. Okay. There was somebody else that was the death doula there. Somebody who had a set of aged parents living in the house with them and wanted to broach the subject of death with that set of parents generationally didn't want to talk about their death at all because they felt it hastened the inevitable.
Right.
And I thought to myself, this is a death cafe. This is really important because it causes us to talk, to think out loud together, and to be face-to-face with people we would never be face-to-face with, and ask all questions all human beings have. And there was a native person, a native elder, also part of that same table.
So a really diverse group of people
Very
with a lot of
diverse
different
group kind of
backgrounds.
thing, and I found it revelatory, because if you're in church life or in any other particular ghettoized kind of life, as good as the ghetto may be, and that's the way I feel about it, kind of thing. It's still very proscribed. You don't see, you don't hear what you need to hear and learn from other people. So the Death Cafe is very much an open-ended, not a free-for-all, because it is somewhat guided, and you do have a presenting question at each table. Then we switched around. Ended up, sat with the same native elder at my other one, but I think there were 8 in that particular second table I sat at. Totally different bunch, different question, and my learning curve was like that.
Did you find that everybody left feeling more comforted?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh gosh, they're glowing.
Always a positive experience.
That's wonderful.
The Kingston Library does this. St. Andrews Picton, I just got an email this morning. They're going to have a Death Cafe over there, and they've done that more than once. They have a very creative rector
Yes.
over there, not rector, incumbent minister is the Presbyterian term, at St. Andrew's Picton kind
Okay.
of thing. So they're doing all kinds of different things over there. And death cafes have become sort of a cool thing.
It's
Another
like a
cool
movement,
thing.
like a little trendy
Yeah.
movement.
Here's another
Yeah.
thing that I just dropped off an article to Sarah about. I just happened to upon it. They call it phone in the wind, phone to the wind or something.
Wind phone.
Wind phone.
Wind phone, okay.
It began in Japan. An artistic, entrepreneurial person had a cousin die, and this person had a wonderful garden, and so he found an old glass phone booth in Japan, installed it in his garden, and it's not hooked up to anything, but he bought an old rotary phone
Okay.
kind of thing, and he would go down to the phone booth at the bottom of his garden, and he would talk to his friend.
Oh my goodness.
He would dial, and he would just talk to him.
Right,
I think that's a really great idea
right.
because we all, and I bring it back to my initial point, that person is alive
Right.
forever in you and me,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And I still find, I talk to my grandparents, my mom, my dad,
Yeah, of course.
and to that little child that we lost,
Right.
you know, and
For
it's
sure.
no longer part of our life. And I think it's really important people have that opportunity to say yes to life, even though they know fully well that person is no longer present.
Right.
in
But
this
we
world
all
as we
have,
think.
it's so objective what comes after, right? Like this
And
so
to
objective.
normalize talking about death and
Yeah.
talking to those who are the dead in our lives
Right.
that are fully alive in our heart and mind.
Right. That's so lovely. I have a couple question Q&A things, if that's okay. One of the first ones is, and we kind of talked about it really quickly, was people looking for, I don't really know if this is a question actually, but it's people looking for like signs of their loved ones or having dreams of their loved ones. Like, have you guys, I guess it's a two-parter, and also like feeling loved ones after. Have you guys ever felt anything at your funeral home when you're having services or?
Oh, like actual people, spiritual people there.
Right, like have you had any experiences
not.
like that? Okay.
I have not, no.
Say that again for me.
I know, it's
Very
kind of a weird
briefly.
question. I'm
That
looking
last
at
That's a
it.
part.
great question. I like
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah,
That's
so
why I would
just
like you to
having
repeat
any like spiritual experiences in your profession.
Ah,
Like the first question that I said no to, I felt was quite specific. Like, had I experienced spirits at the funeral home?
Right.
And
yeah, no, I have not had that kind of
Okay.
thing. But I am finding a lot more talk these days and an ease with talking with those that have an absent person that's still in their heart,
Right.
talking to psychics
Right.
and going to people for readings and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did not expect that, but I think it is a present day search for
For sure.
answers in a world in which organized religion is no longer the mainstay that it was for so
Right.
many people. They are looking for answers, kind of thing. And I would be considered a heretic, literally, in some of the circles that are my friends and colleagues, kind of thing.
Okay.
But I think that's maybe okay,
Yeah.
because I want people to get used to the idea, because I think it's healthy for them that that person is still with them.
Right.
So anything that will assist people to converse with that person or to get closure in some
Right.
sense, as we call it, it's never really closure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a temporary door ajar,
Right.
kind of thing. I want people to get comfortable with that.
Right.
And
I do.
living with their ancestors and celebrating the Day of the Dead and recognizing that anniversaries don't need to be dreaded, but need to be embraced and celebrated. And birthdays, weddings, even the death anniversary.
Right.
You know, in the church, when they have a saint's day, it's not the day of their birth that we're celebrating, it's the day of their death.
Okay.
So St. Patrick's Day, March the 17th, is the day of his martyrdom.
I see.
And
Interesting.
what that does, it says again that that's when life really begins.
Right.
Because if you have a belief system that encompasses that, whether it comes from a Judeo-Christian ethic or some other ethic in which we are one with the universe, kind of thing. Perfect.
Interesting. That's
So
great.
we need to get more comfortable with the idea of living with the dead as part of our everyday life.
Right. And it's exactly what you said too about making those rituals and, you know,
Important.
making that time
Essential.
to remember and still connect with that. Okay, I love that.
Can I just jump in?
I would love for you to.
There's a book that I have here by Patricia Pearson, who is a journalist who wrote Opening Heaven's Door after her, I think it was her mom, maybe her dad, died. And she and her sister, who were at different coasts, had similar, they knew at the same time.
Okay.
So it made her go and investigate how common is this?
Right.
And it's very common.
Wow.
Just the other day at the New York Times Sunday story was about this, and there's a Canadian Dr. Kerr who has done scientific studies about what is going on when people are dying and how often they come to this place of talking to people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
That it's like 85%, his scientific studies say people have this experience.
Wow.
I was really surprised.
That's significant.
Yes.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And that's
Pretty
important. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I do want to give a caveat that not everybody gets that. And for people who want it, it's really heartbreaking. Like many people, when someone's died, they just are craving for them to come to them in a dream or talk to them in the day. And they don't have that, and that can be really hard. Conversely, I've had someone who wasn't looking for it have it, and it freaked her right out. So it's not an easy, straightforward experience. But just to say that, certainly to anyone listening, that it's common and as far as we know, very normal.
Right, especially the mediumship side of that really emerging. We had a psychic medium on, I think, episode 7. And that was really interesting to just really look at different perspectives and different experiences from everyone. So that was really cool. Okay, so also we did already talk about disconnection from the emotions and the emotional side of it and what led you here. The last question that I had is, what do you say to somebody besides just, I'm sorry for your loss? Is there something that somebody can say? Is there a right thing to say? Have you seen something be successful? How do you support those people?
Such a great question. So is that coming from someone asking, what do I say to someone who's grieving?
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
It is.
Let's acknowledge that. We have the trite pat answers that come.
Right.
I think the presence of a person being there says the most you can possibly say. I will often say in my celebrative events, the fact that you are here is already paying full honor and respect to the family, to this person that we're all trying to honor today. This is really important. You give them the best gift that we human beings give to one another at such a time as this. I will say things like, please carry that on. Be present for your person. If I get a chance to be in a bereavement support kind of situation afterwards, I will say, please be in touch with somebody. You need to develop circles of relationship that are new and different than you've had before. Don't let the celebrative event, the funeral, the memorial, whatever it's going to be, don't let that be the last time you talk to this person, or that you find somebody to talk to. If you are the bereaved person, find that new circle. I've done that just this past week twice.
Okay.
In a bereavement support setting.
I have heard feedback from somebody else who lost their partner a little bit later in life, and they said everybody's there for the first couple of days, and then it's the bereavement. It's what comes after.
That's why we delay bereavement support. Usually, we ask people to wait for a while.
Okay.
3 months, roughly, because they're in a flurry, they're in a whirlwind.
Right.
They can't see beyond the next second.
I see.
And so it's really important that bereavement be seen as something that needs to be supported later on when everybody's gone back home, their life settles down to their normal. Well, your life is no longer
the new normal.
It's a whole new thing that you're wanting to put back together again, like kintsugi pottery.
Right. I love it. What do you think, Sarah?
I'm amazed at this. We have learned that it really is important to acknowledge what is going on. Even if someone comes in to do something practical to the funeral home, and I know that they're grieving, I don't want to just go, oh, you're here for XYZ. I want to say, how are you doing?
Right.
And if it's the first time, I think I usually say, my condolences to you for the loss of your father, and or whoever, your daughter. I think the best thing I can say that has really helped me, and I can't say I'm always able to do this, but if I can get myself to really think that this is a human being that I love,
Right.
it changes everything.
Of course.
And I don't even know them, but I know that they're made and they're a creature like I am, and they're going through this battle.
Right.
And I'm just gonna come to them with that love in my heart. It changes everything.
Right. That's great advice, actually, because I think obviously the people who are asking these questions are going to find them in a situation eventually that they're going to, be recognizing someone that they love that's not here anymore. So if they're speaking from the heart, is what you mean.
That's right.
Okay.
And later on, when you see that, if you see that person, say, tell me a little bit more about your loved person. You can name it because you know that
Right.
person. You're gonna tell me about how you're doing, kind of thing, about John or Susan, kind of
Right.
thing. Really important that we keep on addressing and asking them that.
And they'll
And
tell you
talking-
if they're
talking
like,
about it,
I'm
talking
so
about their
mad,
person.
don't talk about it anymore. They'll tell you if they don't want to talk about
Yeah,
it
I
that
say-
day, right?
Right.
I'll tell them because they'll learn that I'm a clergy person. I'll say, I am so angry at God sometimes I shake my fist at him and I don't talk to him for a long, long time.
Right. Right.
So I try to identify and get real with them in that bereavement conversation, if you will,
Yep.
because that's where I've been. It's authentic.
Right.
And if they feel my authenticity and genuineness when I'm sharing something personal about that, which they know is important to me, then they can be genuine and authentic with me
Right.
in our conversation, and we can get to real quick. I use my Coke commercial line from way back quite often. Make it real.
Okay.
And we're going to make it real.
Yeah.
Because that's what will get through to people. Openness, honesty, and transparency about death is so important.
And those are all really great ideas, but don't forget to pull over when a funeral procession's going by.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Some basic things like I love, usually people in the country I grew up in Harrowsmith, are way better than in town.
Right.
But like just realizing, yes, you are late and you are all about getting your kid and but oh wait, someone's died and their
Someone
world
has died.
has stopped.
Right.
So
Perspective and respect.
let's
Deeply moving.
Let's take this moment and respect that their world is stopped and stop for half of a minute for them.
Right.
It really
Okay.
is helpful.
Of course, it's shocking that you have to say that, but yeah, I'm sure that is, everybody's in a rush. So, well, I'm so grateful for you guys being here and spreading your word about everything that you have going on. Is there anything that we didn't cover today? Is there anything you
What a
want
great
to...
question. I love that question.
Is there anything that we missed? I tried to prepare, but like I said,
You
today was
did
You got
great
great
another
job.
couple of hours.
We can do a part two.
Thank you for
We
that.
can do a part two for sure. I've had a lot of fun. Honestly, it does bring me comfort and bring me a little bit of peace,
Yes.
and just not feeling so daunting to just start. It always starts with a conversation, right? And so I do think there's a lot of information here that maybe somebody who hasn't been able to bring themselves to have this conversation.
I want to talk. Here's what I want to ask.
Tell me.
I want to say that we watched some of your episodes, both Sarah and I on our own. And I watched with my wife, kind of thing, just to get a sense of you two. And we noticed that you are best of friends. That seems to be pretty obvious, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You are a tag team in and of yourself. We are feeling the pain that you are both feeling.
Yeah.
And we're especially feeling it through Tamara, the Jane Cook episode
Yeah.
that you recorded, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I will remember you two.
Well, thank you
as
for
a
that.
result. It's really important that we say that we will remember this. This has been an important time for, I'm sure, Sarah and myself.
Of course.
And we will articulate these kind of things, but also to say what you're doing is a wonderful thing. It comes from an obvious point of great pain. Look at the title of the podcast.
Yeah.
And we would like you to give our loving care. to
Well,
your
I
Tamara.
really appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you for taking the time for that and just that recognition. I mean, of course, we've talked about it a lot on here about our journey, and just before we started, we talked about it as well. And
that's grief work too.
Yeah.
What you're doing is working on into the bereavement part.
right,
Because we all have losses
yeah,
in life. It can not only be a physical death, it can be all kinds of losses.
right. Lots of
And
things we
the
grieve.
principles translate well from what you're doing. So you're performing a great service to
Yeah.
Well, I will pass
amazing.
that on to her too,
It's
because
amazing.
I mean, of course, it's just trying to, as she says, take pain into purpose.
Of
And
course.
I mean, the Gwen Effect, Tamara has her foundation as well. So I don't know how much you guys know about that, but Tamara works with bringing boxes of sunshine to
Yes.
medical families
I like
or
that.
grieving
Yeah,
families.
that's
What is in the box of sunshine?
So she tries really hard to work with local businesses and support those as well. So she's of course helping the community as
Sure.
well, and yeah, a lot of it's right now by donation. She is she's starting to sell some things. She's got some candles coming, but yeah, she's got really big plans for that. She just spoke at Queen's actually last week,
Cool.
yeah, with the medical faculty there and the students there.
Wonderful.
So,
There's
yeah.
something you can do.
For
Because I
sure.
think the medical
Death
field
education.
needs to improve
Yeah.
in this area, because that, of course, they are the point people, right?
Yeah.
For obvious
She had a
reasons.
conversation about ethics, and I of course, like, she runs by her speech, and it finished as you get into the medical field because you want to care for people.
Yes.
So care for people. Right, and so she just did such a good job, and I think she's going to
Lovely.
share more on hopefully on the podcast. But yeah, we're really fortunate to have the platform and to be able to.
That is
Did a great
bereavement.
job
This
to
is
make this
bereavement
platform.
work. What you're
Thank you.
doing for in the medical field, I think is going to be so helpful.
Like I said, I just show up, and whatever she needs, I'm the listening ear, the sense of humor. So just to get her through it.
Well
So it's
done.
really all her. But thank you guys so much for joining us today. And
Privilege.
Joe's really fast at getting things edited, so we'll see it up soon. We'll definitely provide some links to your page, and also some of these books as well that you guys talked about. And really, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Don't forget to subscribe.
Bye.